side of Franklin. And Robert, we're going to go sideways.
4 people in the chat.
Okay. Oh. Welcome to Latter Daily Digest. We honor creators, and today is Tuesdays with Tim. And we're in Tim's living room just chatting about stuff. Today's episode is why, parenthetically, is Mormonism dying? So the why part is our own individual experiences. And then we're going to examine, so we're going to talk about how our experiences are different from what is happening in the church now and how that might cause Mormonism to die within us. And then after that, we're going to talk about sort of some stats and other things about what might be causing the future of Mormonism to diminish, we'll say. So let's see. Megan, you want to talk about Mormonism as when you were younger and how you understand it's different today and how that might create some...
I'm the old guy here.
You want to start, Tim?
Let me start with me. Yes.
So we're going to start. Okay,
Tim's
so Tim...
It's
was
my
Tim,
channel.
I can't remember.
Show.
Was Tim a youth? Was it CE or BCE? I can't remember.
It was CE.
CE, the year CE, 1960s. Your formative years.
1960s. Yep. Westwood 2nd Ward, West Los Angeles, right behind the temple on Ohio Avenue. Church was like a family. We had bazaars, we had ward dinners, we had ward movie night. Let's see. We had mutual, we had primary, we had mutual. And
we would go to the roller rink sometimes.
Yeah. So we would go to the movies together. So we would do things as youth groups that they don't do anymore. You know, I mean, you go to church on Sunday, and then Wednesday was primary. And then
and then Cub Scouts. We had Cub Scout was a different day than primary.
That's right. Yeah. I think that was Tuesday. And then when you turn 12, you go to mutual on Tuesday night.
Women had Relief Society on the weekday too.
On the week, that's right. Relief Society was a weekday. Church was 3 meetings. You had priesthood meeting in the morning, then you had Sunday school, and then in the evening you had sacrament meeting. So you went 3 times to church on Sunday. Yeah. And then you had a fireside sometimes that night. I haven't heard about a fireside for, years.
Road shows sometimes.
Do they do those?
Road shows.
I actually attended a fireside about a month ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a ton of firesides in my area. I get emails about it all the time.
Yeah. Okay. And it was like a family. I mean, we were like a family. And everybody cared for each other. And everybody watched out for each other. My neighbor behind me was in the ward. My friend up the street. Oh, yeah. Johnny up the street. They're both Johnny. Johnny Kenna behind me and Johnny Black up the street.
Sports programs.
Yeah, that's right.
As we were teenagers.
We had a softball field. Well, they're still there behind the temple. We used to play softball. Yeah. So it was very active, and you were doing things a lot with your friends, your family. And it was much different, and it changed in the 80s and the 90s. Became more corporate. And that's when you guys were born. So now they've done away with, you have 2-hour church. Used to be 3 hours. Now it's 2 hours church.
Plus there were families in the wards with like 5, 6, 7, 8 kids.
8 kids. Yep. Well, we had families moving into our ward. It was during the Vietnam War, and they would only let so many kids from each ward go on a mission. So we had a couple of families moving to our ward so that their children can go on missions rather than go to Vietnam.
Oh,
Yeah. This one guy was.
you can draft dodge and go on a mission instead?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Huh. How privileged. Sorry.
Yeah, because we had 3 or 4 families move in because of that.
Right.
Anyway.
Our sports programs, I think, as Maven's pointed out, just became like young women's or young men's, doing an activity instead of doing, I don't know if they do sports programs anymore in leagues and stuff. I know that when I was a teacher, as quorum president, as a 14-year-old, and maybe you could just hop in.
Remember, we used to have those. We would go together and we'd do a ward party, and we even had a Ouija board once at one.
Oh, that would never have happened.
We had a Ouija.
In the church building, Tim?
No,
That's
it was at a
wild.
friend's house. At a friend's
okay.
house,
Oh,
the young men and young women would get together and we'd have a party once a month. Somebody had a Ouija
I
board.
could say, like,
Dennis
coming
had
at
a
it.
Ouija board. I remember.
So I was a military brat, so we moved around a lot. I know when you have like roots in a ward, you know everybody and everything and everybody's business. I never quite got that level with all the moves that we did, but it was nice to have like the automatic community to plug into. So there's automatically kids my age to meet and automatically built in lots of time to hang out with those kids at church and church activities, et cetera, et cetera. Especially when, you go foreign and then, you've got language barriers and cultural barriers in there. Like you plug into a church, even if they don't have English speaking, if it's far enough out, like there's still that familiarity there. And even if you can't understand what people are saying, you still know what they're saying. It still feels and sounds the same. And so that served me well, I think, when I was little and growing up. And I don't feel that anymore as an adult. By the time I got to like single adult stage, the plug-in wasn't quite as much there. And I don't know if it might be a combination between being single and not having the family aspect to integrate you in more, or plus just the differences, making it less like community based. It was really hard to get single adult activities together. People just don't want to come. So anyway, I think the atmosphere is starting to be lost. Plus it's just maybe harder for singles. But anyway, yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Maven, I can totally identify with that because I moved around a lot as a kid as well. And it was nice to have that like kind of built-in community. However, like living outside of Utah, it was a very small community. And, in all the places that I lived, my parents, I think specifically bought houses that were near the church so that we would be able to get there quickly or whatever. But, like in my middle school and my high school growing up, there were 2 or 3 members tops the whole time. And it was always like a more regional kind of thing. So, while it was nice to have that built-in community, it was a really small community. And then
Mine were never that small, but I wonder if, because was yours military too, or it was different?
when I was younger, it was military. And then later on, it was different. And then once I got divorced and the single adult community of the like over 40 group, like very, very small. And even in, Texas is a place where there is a lot of Mormonism, not nearly as much as like Arizona, of course, definitely not as much as Utah, Idaho, but it's still like a pretty large Mormon community. But even so, the over 40 groups were incredibly small, even like on the regional level. So it was always really hard to find community in that way at that age group.
That makes sense. I feel like there used to be a more of a focus because they used to try to almost, it feels like, mirror the Catholic Church, because the Catholics definitely have still those programs and are still very much engaged. Only because my kids are being raised Catholic, I can see how they had the sports programs, they had the activities, they had still a community draw to them. And because of the corporate pull, I think we've all can agree that it has changed because it's not economical for the church, and those budgets aren't even funding basic, janitorial services in the wards. So.
This reminded me, like, budgets. One of my callings was, I think the highest that I ever got as a woman was at like stake YSA representative. And it was a co-calling because it was also like an institute. I was an institute, representative or council member or something like that. So it was a double calling, and we did firesides, like monthly YSA firesides, and I would have a budget of like $50 for refreshments and I got super creative with that because like $50 does not go far when you're expecting and they were pretty well attended. So I would say 50 to 100, or I might be minimizing it, I can't remember, but anyway, yeah, still basically like 50 cents a person, maybe $1 a person. I made it work, but yeah, it was insane. It was difficult.
Wow.
It makes me
Well, even from a corporate level, because they did that YSA thing at the Salt Palace, and I was there for 2 years when they did that. And the first year I was there, it was a little more grand, a little more services provided, like food and the amenities. And then this last year, the one that they held was definitely even more scaled back than the year before. So instead of like growing this culture and like bringing these youth together and making it fun, it's like, oh, let's do it, but let's do it on those shoestring budgets. And they're getting discounts from the city to fund those. So it was pretty over the top ridiculous. Some people were a little upset because they were even doing free busing and not making them pay, like using tax dollars to allow free UTA services to come to the event. And like I said, it just wasn't on the same level, even from this year to last year, working it.
It always infuriates me when the church tries to cut expenses because we know they have plenty of money. And the entire budget for like the entire young single adult activity is like $300 a year. So it's like, 12 cents per person per activity or whatever. Like, it's just ridiculous. And they could give so much money to those things if they really wanted to. But whenever you want to know what a company, what an organization, where their priorities are, you look at their budget and you look at their litigation, and those are their priorities at the end.
It's interesting you mentioned the corporate setting, because in corporations, they tend to focus on some areas and ignore others. Working in a corporate office, being here in Provo, there's a lot of activities all the time, and they spend stupid amounts of food. I went with my roommate to his YSA ward a few times, and they would get like 20 pizzas from Little Caesars and just feed a pile of people. They went all out. But on the flip side, when it comes to the community, it's Provo. And it's kind of like the saying, if you don't like the president, wait 4 years. Well, if you don't like the friend group, wait 1 year, because people graduate, people move in, people get married, and it's just a constant churning of people moving in and moving out. We got people moving in down the street today.
Okay, but Diamond Dave, I guess I have to say, if they're buying all of those Little Caesar pizzas, don't you think that's the people in charge of the activities who are paying for those? It's not the church.
That I don't know. And that's why I threw that out there to see what you guys think. Because you mentioned the corporate setting and just working in a corporate office. I do know that when it comes to any business, there are going to be like high priority areas that are quote unquote high sales that you want to target. And then lower end areas where there are lower quote unquote sales, you're not going to be too concerned about, and you're not going to sink a lot of money into, because you're not going to get that return.
Right.
So what's your take on that?
Personal experience, being in the Young Women's Presidency, our budget was $350 for the entire year. Mm-hmm. So we were expected to have a weekly activity with just the young women. We were expected to have a monthly activity with young men and young women. And then we were expected to have at least between 4 to 6 annual activities that are revolved around holidays or dances or whatever. there was no way that $350 was going to cover anything remotely close to what we needed to have a
Numbers do it.
meaningful activity that was fun, to provide treats, even if we just wanted to have basic level treats. So we were always asking parents to bring in treats. We were asking the community to help supplement. And one of the biggest things for me was when it was time to go to girls' camp, and we had 25 girls in our ward who wanted to go to girls' camp, and the cost for each girl was $125. And so we basically put together a spaghetti dinner to do like a fundraiser where people in the ward would come and buy a plate for $10. And then we would have the girls make treats, and we would auction off the treats at the end of the night. And like the richest 2 or 3 dudes in the ward would get some kind of social clout over bidding $300 on a chocolate cake. And that was what it was like raising money for girls camp.
Is it ever not a spaghetti dinner? I'm just curious, because it was literally a spaghetti dinner every single time for me.
Spaghetti is freaking cheap. And, it's like when you don't have enough money to fund a real dinner with like actual food, you can't have protein. So what are you going to have? Whatever's cheap. And this is what infuriates me, is that like the church has so much money, but they won't pay for every girl to go to girls camp. And I lived in a ward where it was incredibly diverse. We had a huge geographical area, and there were some families that were extremely wealthy and other families that were in poverty. And so what I complained about all the time was like, can you not just allow these girls who are in poverty to be supplemented? Like, can you not just pay for them to go to girls camp? And they're like, well, the brethren were like, no, well, this is my ward level. They were like, well, no, I mean, what we need to do is, since we only have this much budget, we need to go ahead and have the girls fundraise, let them make a treat and then sell it. And then that's their contribution. That makes it so that it's okay for people to give money because they've contributed something too. They don't earn it. Give us money. You have to earn it. Exactly. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of my wards had, like you said, there's a spread. I guess geographically, you definitely have like wealthier wards and non-wealthier wards. But overall, I feel like, and this is just a suspicion, so I don't know if anyone can confirm or anything, but it did seem like that some of the wealthier members of the ward would kind of become like patron saints of the ward, but not always up front. They wouldn't, it wouldn't be like the $300 bid clout chasing. I think they try to keep it quiet because it's smart to keep your wealth quiet and your willingness to give quiet if you're wealthy, and then you have more control over. But I suspect that I do think that there were kind of like silent donations or donations of like locations of, this cabin in the woods or something for activities and things like that. I feel like wealthier members, would subsidize a lot, and which is fine, but they shouldn't have to from their own pocket, because the church can absolutely do it. And I think when the fact that the church doesn't do it, I think it actually tends to feed into the class divide a little bit, because after a while, when you're constantly getting hit up as the wealthy person in the ward, for everyone else, when again, like the church could totally afford it, you start to feel used, and the church takes advantage. It takes its members and everything for granted anyway, so I just think that adds to it. And I know, like in one ward that I had when I served my mission, this was in the Allentown area, there was a huge dichotomy. It was like very, very wealthy white people from the suburbs and very not wealthy Black people from the city, from downtown. And it was just like night and day, 2 wards in one. And like, it did not mix well at all. And I would say like part of it was a race issue, but I think the wealth issue was like the biggest thing. It was such an unfriendly ward. Missionaries previously had kind of like over baptized like too many people that didn't qualify. Like they would like literally don't know anything about the church. Like it was like they had some really bad missionaries. So I get that. And the word just felt like used up. And so by the time I got there, they were so stingy, like with anything. And I there were so many times that I felt like I'm going door to door. I'm trying to find people to bring to the gospel, but like I do not want to bring them to this ward. This is the worst example like of what Mormonism is. Like they were so unfriendly to investigate. They were like almost hostile to investigators. And the elders had actually found, we only had one baptism the whole time I was in that area. The elders had found her in the city. So she was definitely poor. She was divorced. She had 2 kids, but she also had a PhD. So she was a very smart and capable woman. It was just, with circumstances. She had like a narcissistic lawyer of a husband that just got like everything. So she's just trying to like, get by with this. And so she was open and she listened. And then, but I remember when, this is what the elders told me because they sat in with her bishop's interview. And they were saying that the bishop was like, okay, are you sure you want to join? Are you sure are you going to live this part of the lifestyle? Are you sure you can give this up? Are you sure? Are you sure? And he said it was just so uncomfortable that it was just like, just really judgmental and like, do you think you can handle it? Do you think you've got what it takes? And so, yeah, she got baptized, but it was really, I felt bad and she stopped coming. And so, of course, the word is like, of course, they never stay, and it was just like, you guys are so mean, like you.
Wow.
It was clear that like she was a burden and that's how the leadership saw her because she didn't have a man, so, and she was from the poor part of town. So I think that's really primarily like, this is somebody else that we're going to have to take care of. And they just didn't want to. It was a very, very sad ward to be in.
Like you're going to be a drain on the church budget. On
Right.
the
And the individual, because like the wealthy, they had helped out, but then they just got to a point where they felt like it had been too much, and then they just went like complete the other end where it's like, I won't give anyone a penny for anything ever. It's like they lost all charity because of that, and I think that's sad. If the church paid for more things, like these people, they're giving, they would have either contributed more to the church or to the other things in their community, but instead they're just like, nope, these people don't deserve it. They, they're not like us. They won't stick around, and so it was hostile. It was very, very hostile.
The church could be like Mormon Jesus. And, after all you can do, swoop in and help everybody out.
Yeah, for sure. There's so much they could do to help so
Let's
many
see.
people.
Well, that always depends on a bishop, I swear. It depends on the bishop and the stake presidency because they're the ones that usually have that power of control. And they're the ones who can dole out if you get to go to the bishop's storehouse or if they'll help you with your rent or mortgage if you lose your job. That's totally within the bishop's, world of control. So if he doesn't feel like you're contributing or a member who's adding to this situation, they're going to tell you no. Only because my uncle was a bishop and used to brag about telling people no on being able to go to the bishop's storehouse. And I thought that was pretty disgusting.
Wow.
Yeah. So Debbie and Robert, we still need to hear from you. Robert, you want to go first?
Ladies first. Debbie.
Okay.
Well, I grew up in the same way Tim grew up. I mean, I was born in the 70s. So the church had a different vibe very much. And it was Sandy. So we had a diverse group, but everyone in my neighborhood was Mormon. So, I mean, I could go up and down the street and tell you every person in every house because we may have had a few semi-inactive families, but I don't even think in our ward or in my direct neighborhood we had non-members living in that neighborhood. Everyone was Mormon. So I just didn't know any different growing up because that's just what you know, you don't think twice about it. But I've definitely seen, because I was one of the first ones to leave the church in my peer group and in my family, because I left when I was 30 and I'm almost 50. So it's been 20 years. How shocking that was for me to leave and how many friends and how much judgment I faced back then versus now when I have friends leaving the church or even family members. I had a cousin come out and tell me just last week he left the church and it's the uncle's son.
Wow.
So now it's kind of like when they come out of the church, it's a celebratory thing. Like, guess what I did? I left the church. Yeah. And it's almost like they've achieved like rock star status. Like they've freed themselves of this burden. Whereas when I left, everyone was like, oh my gosh, just so much guilt, so much heartbreak, which added to the pressure of leaving because when you're being told every day by your friends and your family, direct or indirect, that you're making the worst choice of your life, you're giving up all of your blessings, and you're being selfish. Like, how could you be so selfish? I used to joke back in the day that if I cured cancer, my dad would still say, he's changed, but he would have still said back then, like, if you can cure cancer, why can't you just go back to church? Like, that would have been more important to him, that I went back to church, than the fact that I could have made any kind of personal breakthrough on that level. And that's what I have seen. And that's why I think this topic is interesting, is because now people are leaving in droves, and it's some of the best people. It's people you never thought would leave. It's the Tims, it's the RFM, it's these powerhouses, these doctrinal scholars, you know, and everyone on this panel can probably identify with that, because you guys are all much smarter than me as far as most gospel topics, and had probably better callings. But I feel like now when people leave, there's not the stigma to leave. And I don't know if that was because COVID kind of broke that habit for a lot of people. Like, a lot of people left the church because they were forced to stay at home, and they just didn't go back. So I don't know if there's a play in that whole, I don't miss it and I don't want to go back to it kind of vibe, but it's nice. I like it.
Yeah.
And I just feel like at this point, it's a big lie. Sometimes religion is exhausting for me, because it's a hula hoop of like, I'm going to try to prove it's true with this talking point, and I'm going to try to prove it's false with this talking point, when in my mind, it's all just a bit like
Garbage.
arguing flat earth. Yeah, like it like a non-issue in my like. So that's my take.
I was gonna say that's I kind of noticed that with what Debbie's saying, because like John Dolin, when Nemo the Mormon became Nemo the ex-Mormon, there was like a whole celebration vigil thing that he did. and then like it might be COVID. I'm wondering if it might be partially the times with the internet and just generational, because I left the church and people jokingly call me an apostate. Like it's a big joke. They don't like, there isn't any of what you mentioned involved. It's like, oh, Diamond Dave's a complete and total apostate now, haha, and then everyone just goes about their day. But I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic. I've noticed that as well.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I do think that during COVID, I think a lot of people, and I can speak from my own experience during COVID, I loved that I could tune into online church, and when something problematic was happening, I could just close my laptop and be like, we're done with church for today. Children, here is why I did not appreciate those comments, you know, and we didn't have to make a big scene and get up and walk out of sacrament meetings. So it was, you know, it made it easy to spot the manipulator, everyone, spot the controlling behavior. So for me personally, you know, it was just nice to not have to go in person and to just be able to put it away when it was enough. And I just never went back. And I got asked after COVID was over to be a Relief Society teacher again. And I really did consider it, honestly, because I was like, okay, maybe I could effect some change. Maybe I could make sure that I don't teach certain problematic things. Maybe I could make sure that I call attention to some things that are unhealthy and are problematic. But I sort of played that forward, and I was like, well, they're not going to like what I'm going to teach. Eventually someone's going to complain. They're going to go to the bishop. Eventually I'm going to get excommunicated. It's going to be a whole thing. And I was like, I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to put myself through it. And I think a lot of people felt the same way. They just didn't go back after COVID.
Robert's time.
Yeah. Okay. So my belief is that most Latter-day Saints are attending for social reasons, particularly the younger people and like new converts. Now, I grew up in Nebraska, which we proudly declared as the defending stakes of Zion, which surrounded Jackson County in preparation for the big return. And the social reasons, the social activities that brought us together looked like dances. I mean, tons of dances. I love those. Road shows, Boy Scouts. And then it also looked like a lot of serving together. We would go to the church farm and pick apples and make apple juice. We would do fundraisers. And today, most of those are gone. And as the church becomes more corporate and the handbook of instruction gets thicker and thicker, local leaders have less autonomy for how to raise funds. And frankly, I don't see today's Latter-day Saints playing together, dancing together. And the only service that I see emphasized doing together is temple service. And that's almost like an individual thing because there's not a lot of interaction one with another. I think it's sad. And in my last few years as a Latter-day Saint, my family had some unique experiences, which, for example, we had a child who came out to us as gay. And then we would turn to the church for resources. And there was nothing, We participated in the church's Bible and Book of Mormon vignette videos. And the contrast of seeing Jesus come alive and Book of Mormon characters come alive, and then turn and compare that to the corporate church, it just didn't match. It felt very off, like something is wrong here. The magic is gone. And I think they've shot themselves in the foot by cutting financial quarters and ruining the social scene that it was. What are your thoughts about that?
I agree.
It makes sense.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, if they just emphasize nothing social but going to the temple, how's that going to build cohesion in a community?
No, and they build it as such a good thing that they were moving things towards the more teaching being in the home. And they build it as, we're moving it more towards parents, teaching the gospel in their home more often, and there's less pressure, there's less burden on especially the sisters to provide food for activities and to show up multiple times a week and things like that. But they failed to acknowledge, as always, the church leadership is just so tone deaf because they're in their little white ivory tower over there. They don't know what it's like to be an actual church member in an actual ward, in an actual congregation. They have no idea what that's like. They're so far removed from it that they become totally tone deaf to what the actual membership needs. And one of the huge parts of religion is that community piece, that piece where people feel like they're accepted, like they belong, like there is an aspect of it where we come together on a regular basis and we relate with each other. They've lost complete sight of that, and they've moved everything into sort of like this little box of, teaching the gospel at home, which they bill as a good thing, but then we lose that social aspect, that community aspect of it that is so important to religion. It just baffles me that these men who are doctors and lawyers and businessmen have turned the church, into this corporate structure, and they do so much research, but about all the wrong things. They've never researched what humanity actually needs out of religion. They've never taken themselves out of this box where they think that they're providing the very best thing on the very best. Like, they're so narcissistic that they have no clue what humanity needs out of religion. And if they were really smart, they would research the sociology of religion. They would research the anthropology of religion.
That's what I wanted to come in on.
Yes, and find out what it is that people actually need out of religion, and they would provide that instead of doing all of these things to
The
save
polygamy video?
money, to save resources, to save face, to
Right.
protect themselves legally. It's just they're just doing all the wrong things because they're so narcissistic that they don't understand what humanity needs.
They really put the cart before the horse on this
Yes.
one. And I know,
Oh,
like, a lot of
definitely.
people think that, and there's good evidence for this, that as a species, there's something in our evolution that makes us have this desire for at least myth making, and maybe deities, maybe not, but still some kind of a shared myth. And,
Yeah.
Britt Hartley, she talks about this a lot. She's very much an atheist. She's very much secular, but also very spiritual. And so it's interesting that the religious community, because for them that's evidence that there is a God. The fact that there's this inborn thing, and I won't say to that like whether it does mean that or don't, whether it does or it doesn't mean there's a God. We can experience that anyway. And if there's an evolutionary benefit for us, then that makes sense. But ultimately, as human beings, we're a social species. And what the religion does is help build social cohesion. But it's the social that's really the core here that we need, and religion serves that. And I think they've got it backwards. They see that we serve religion, but that's not how we got to where we are as a species. That's not how the religion was able to spread, and that's why we're seeing it die right now, is because they've swapped the priorities. They see the message and the doctrine as the most important thing, the truth of it, the truth claims, and they've lost the heart and soul of it and what it actually does for anyone.
I really want to know why, not even just the prophet, but why people with priesthood keys need to do surveys in the first place. Like I like, not trying to be disrespectful. I have just never, again, not trying to be disrespectful, but I just have never understood that, because I've always heard, and even a lot of my friends who are still in, talk about personal spiritual revelation discernment, which cool, I'm on board with. Why do you need a survey? Like,
Right.
and who are these people that are being surveyed? I hear about surveys going around everywhere, and I can't find a single member that's actually taken one.
That's right. High
Wow.
five pairs.
You took one, Megan? Really? What
I
are they
did.
like? Please
I
tell
I've
me.
did.
taken them.
I think this was back in 2015. I took a survey regarding the temple garments, and it might have been later than 2015, but I took a survey about temple garments. Like, as a female, how did they make me feel? And I remember specifically there being questions about body shame and things like that. And I was so happy to answer that survey, because temple garments always made me feel gross. They made me feel like my body was disgusting. They made me feel like I had to like hide my body. Like, it was awful. So I was happy to answer that survey. It's the only one I ever got, and I was so happy to get it. But it was like at the end of my journey in Mormonism. But I agree with you, Diamond Dave. Like, if the brethren actually had the power of discernment, if they actually had access to revelation from God, why in the world would they ever need surveys? Because they would just be able to say, we know that the majority of the membership need X thing, and they would just do that.
Apparently they know that YSA students need food, so that's good, I guess. Like, at least pizza's covered.
Hey, they got to keep those college kids intrigued, and the first way to do that is to feed a poor college kid. That's 101.
If we could list the number of members who joined because there was free food, I think we would probably be ashamed of what the number was.
Oh, that's hilarious.
True.
Well, something to be said for that, for sure.
True.
Well, and I think also the internet has transformed the conversation completely, because I also follow other religions because I kind of trauma bond with them. Like, so an ex-Scientologist or an ex-Jehovah Witness or an ex-Amish who comes from high demand religions, or religions that expect you to follow the dogma explicitly. You can almost share their story. It's just a little different. And I feel like everyone's kind of leaving these religions because people are using this format like YouTube to have these conversations that are no longer, there's no longer the water fountain at work. There's no longer that space or place in a community, especially church, to have free thinking conversations without being so divisive. So people are looking for their communities online. And that's why you see these channels with people who enjoy each other in the chat and get to know people and form these communities, because you're finding people that are like you, that have those same kind of beliefs. That's why the ex-Mormon community is so popular and thriving, is because it's kind of the new substitute for what they lost. And all of us have had some of the same traumas, so we can identify with what it meant to have that be true, and then what it means to have that not be true, or a place in our life. And the church just hasn't been able to compete with that. And I don't think they will. I think that's what's going to be the ultimate downfall, is because they aren't going to be forward thinking enough to say, how do we get this messaging across and have it be effective? Because you can even see with the pro-Mormon channels, they're a little bit goofy sometimes with how hard they're trying to defend the church, where it is almost triggering to anyone who is no longer a member or on the fence. Or if you were an outsider, watching people defend some of the dogma, I think would be a little funky. Like if I was not a member and I watched that polygamy video for kids, I would be super creeped out, because it creeped me out just knowing what I know as a member and an ex-member. So
That's right. We're in Tim's living room, and every now and then we bring out a whiteboard, and we happen to have some slides to show.
Wait, is this the
oh,
secret
that's
Tim
interesting.
board meeting?
The secret
Yes.
board meeting.
This is the secret Tim meeting. Yeah.
Minnesota is almost black. That's wild.
Isn't that amazing?
That's not surprising, though. I see Minneapolis. It's that little yellow dot in the center that grew 5%.
Trying to make it bigger. We're still here, but we can make this screen bigger so people can see it at home. And so these are 2010 versus 2020. The everything below the beige or pink or red are losses, and the beige and pink and red are counties that have gained religious adherence. So there is a lot of blue, dark blue, a lot of light blue, a lot of lighter blue, and just a teeny bit of gain on this slide. And let's see.
Wow, that's amazing.
Here's something. I can't see the top of that. How many percent are LDS? Less than 1%.
Yeah.
And less than 0.5% are Hindus. And I didn't add that there were Protestant and other groups. This is like if there were 100 people in a room, there would be one Mormon, one Hindu, 30 Protestant, 25 Catholics, 20 people who are nothing, and then 4 atheists. No, but 5 agnostic.
And Friday night, the atheists there in Kern County had a meeting, and there were 4 of us there. So that's about right.
So I just gotta ask, based off of that past slide of 100 people in the room, I'm the Hindu. Who's the Mormon in this panel? Or is there one in the chat? Is there one in the chat
There might
somewhere?
be one in the
Chat.
Tim is not the Mormon.
I don't think
Who
the
still has-
channel.
Who
We've got
still
4
has their
atheists
name on
at
the
least.
record?
Name on the record
So-
here.
Well, my
Okay.
kids.
Oh, I still have my
names
name on the
record.
records.
Okay.
My name's still on the record.
Oh, mine is too.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm the Hindu and the Mormon. All right, never
You're the
mind.
Hindu and the Mormon.
I am not.
I'm
a
keeping my name on the
recorded
record,
Mormon.
so class action lawsuit, I can still say I'm a member, get my tithing back.
Yeah, so the rate of
Because
chapel have decreased a lot since the 80s. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was if you build them, they will come. And now the rate of growth of chapels is back near the same as 1945.
Wow.
Wow. 1945. Are you
For the
serious?
amount built each year.
That's rough.
And the
Amazing.
growth rate of chapels is going down, down, down.
Dude, and look at the temples they're building. What a money laundering scam. I swear to God, that is just nepotism feeding their own beast. It's like watching a snake eat its tail. They are literally, it's over the top. Kind of gross with the temples.
Yeah.
Well, it's millions of
That's why I was
dollars. I
throwing
mean,
some stats
who do you
in
think's
there.
making money off that?
Well, they're selling chapels in America, and they're building them in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only place the church is growing is in Africa. Nowhere else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
It's because they're not teaching the Cain doctrine anymore.
Well, they don't have that much access to the internet either.
Depends
Or
on
people
where.
pointing them.
Here you go.
Or
It's not how many
what
members, but
access
how
they
much money
have.
the church has. It's the strength of the faith in the members. It's not how many members there are nowadays.
Oh.
That was honestly kind of my angle, Gene. Because when I was in, I'm like, well, if the church is true, then it doesn't matter how many members are in. And then there are temples everywhere, and it's like, wait, hold on. There's a disconnect here.
Yeah. And one thing that you're not aware of is when we were in the 70s and 80s and 90s, there was a scripture they would quote all the time that probably does not even relate to it. It's called a stone cut out in the
Oh, yeah.
hands will roll down to fill the whole earth. And that's what the church was. The church is filling the whole earth, which it's less than 0.5% of the population now. And so they haven't been quoting that very often in the 2000s.
Yeah.
No, they don't
So-
talk about that anymore.
So we talked about some things that are causing the Mormonism to die now. One thing is, not only building the temples, but what happens in Texas when they want to build a temple in a small town?
They
Well,
bully the town.
The same thing's happening here in Bakersfield.
Threaten to sue.
Yep. And then the town bands together against the church. And I think Fairview is a perfect example because in their final decision, Fairview said, "We will remember you as the bullies who tried to gang up against us and use your resources and your attorneys to your advantage." That's how the church is being remembered in these small towns where they're trying to horn in and build these huge buildings, $50 million buildings in a community where there's poverty, where there's homelessness, where there are people who could benefit from the use of the church's resources, but the church doesn't want to give resources. They just want to build really, really tall buildings.
That's right. I can see a
However-
Texas newspaper headline in the future: "Monument to Bullies," and there's the Fairview.
However, they still hope that somebody will join, despite all that opposition.
It's a $60 million billboard.
That somebody's going to join because of it. Yeah.
That's delusional. That's when you know the church is full of octogenarians who just need to roll over and, I'm sorry, pass the veil. Because talk about being so completely out of touch with reality. So out of touch.
So interesting
Yeah.
that Russell Nelson was, a young doctor in the 60s when the church was building chapels, when they used to be the ward had to supply most of the money, and then they dropped it down to 10% or 20% or whatever it was.
That's when
Hoping
they had
that
a building fund.
If they
Remember the
build
building
it,
fund?
they will come. So they started to build buildings, and that did have, because they were nice churches. They were billboards. They did attract new members. There was, people moving into newly developed areas, and so there was, and it was people like to do community things. We would hold church dances sometimes. I remember adults dancing. Who's ever seen an adults dancing in a ward building in the last 30 years? I don't know, but I can remember it happening
The 90s.
in the 70s.
We did it in the 90s.
You did? Oh, okay.
Yeah, we did it in Hesperia. We did a couple of adult dances.
Not single adults though.
No, not single.
It's the regular ward, family
regular
ward.
ward. Yeah.
And I suppose at some, New Year's Eve, events, there would be adults dancing as well. But
Yeah.
but they would hold regular, adult dances just in the summer, as far as I know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Didn't they almost go broke with that church building theory?
yes,
And
so
that's
they were
why
going
they
to build it.
changed the program.
Yeah, Elder Tanner was called in from a Canadian corporation to help tighten things up, and he stopped some growth of the church headquarter building or something like that, and some other projects. He just like cut spending, right, until they got up into the black again, and then they slowly approved projects one at a time, is my understanding. And so let's see what other types of things are they doing now that
deter growth.
That's secret. I would say that's secret. The shell companies and the stock portfolio turned a lot of people off, because
Yeah,
it's one thing to donate. And I know a lot of people who were true believers and they left because of this, because they honestly, I mean, I have nothing against members of the church. Usually they're great people, because I don't really have issues with people in general. So I know when people are trying to be good people, people want to donate. They want to help out, especially if you have money to give. And of course, you're going to give to your church organization first and foremost, especially if it says it's doing all this great charity work. And then to find out that that money was just going into this wicked slush fund that they lied about to the government about, that they created shell companies. Not only did they lie about it, but they created false companies. That's also the lie within the lie, is because they did something so completely dishonest on top of it to hide it, and then hid it for 30 years. Like, that right there should have made them lose their tax exempt status immediately. This $5 million fine that they had to pay, they paid someone off in the government to get that like little slap on the hand, because I can't imagine any other corporation doing that and not getting a huger, like, come unto Jesus for defrauding the government and lying about it with shell companies. Those weren't even real. Like, that's the thing. You created this whole, you knowingly did it. It's not like someone said, oh, we didn't know about it. No one knew about Ensign Peak to begin with until the whistleblower came out. And that's the most offensive thing, is they sit there and tell us to be honest with our dealings. They judge us by our standards. And then they say, you can't have these blessings if you don't toe the line. And you see that from their universities all the way into their ward buildings when they're talking to your kid about masturbation. But they're the ones going off and creating a shell company to hide their money. And that is so disgusting. It's despicable. And then to say, oh, but we do so much good in the world. No, you don't. Because you know what that kind of money could do for the world? It could change lives. And they're just, sitting on it. Like,
Hoarding the wealth.
Jesus wants gold streets in heaven. Bullshit. He does not. And if that's the kind of celestial kingdom I'm going to, send me straight to hell, because that is disgusting to think that if there's a God or a Jesus who says love everyone and, protect the weak and the widow and feed the hungry and the poor, it's not by creating a shell company that's worth, Babylon. That's my rant. I get off my soapbox. Sorry.
No, I
It's
agree
okay.
with
That
Debbie.
right
It's
there,
okay.
it's disgusting.
There's
We're all
yet
angry.
another-
We're all
there's
angry
yet-
about it. Come on.
And there's yet another layer to it. It's not just that they created shell companies, but they actually duped church employees into being the representatives for those shell companies. So what some people don't realize is that when you create a shell company, you have to have somebody who's the representative of that company. And so they had to have a church employee for each one of those shell companies provide their name, their email address,
Bob Jones.
all of those things. So they
But they
duped
didn't have
church
a social
employees.
media presence.
Exactly. They had to choose people who were flying under the radar, who weren't on Facebook, who weren't on Instagram, whatever. And so they duped those church members, those church employees and members into being the representative for those shell companies. And while Jason Brown says that, yes, the fine was actually massively larger than any other fine for this offense, it was only $5 million. When you compare that to the funds that they were trying to hide, which was over $35 billion, $5 million is this much.
And there's more coming too. There's more investigations
Ridiculous.
going
It's
on.
ridiculous that they only got fined $5 million when
Yeah.
the amount of wealth that they're hiding is in the billions. And they did it because you guys all saw the news interview. The spokesperson for the church said, well, we don't want people telling us what to do with all that money. I'm sorry, what?
What?
That was your reason?
What? Whose money is that? Who don't?
Right.
Whose
It's
money is
supposed to
that?
be the Lord's money. And if you actually have a prophet who is receiving revelation from God, then God should be telling the prophet what to do with that money, not the church membership. You shouldn't be worried about that at all if there actually is a prophet. But the fact that you even raise that concern tells me that you know that there's not a prophet at the head of
I'll
the
quote Captain Kirk in Star Trek. What does
Absolutely.
God need with a shell company?
That's right. That's right.
That was the Wrath of Khan, wasn't it?
I think so.
No, that's Star Trek
One
5.
after.
Oh, my bad. My bad.
The-
No, that one's the zinger. I think that one's a big black eye, because you can always circle back to that and make it an argument. I don't care. It's too easy of an argument to make, and it's valid.
No. Well, something that
Especially
me and
when you're
Tim,
asking people to clean your toilets. I mean, that's gross.
something that me and Tim were talking about, because I take the opinion that when it comes to like the church culture, like the events that you guys talk about dying, I can definitely see that. When it comes to membership, I think it's in a phase of transition, but I don't think the church in its entirety is going to go anywhere. Because they have $265 billion. So unless somebody royally
At
screws
least.
up somewhere, it's really hard to bring down that kind of amount. But also me and Tim and Gene were just kind of going through the statistics of growth in other countries, locations, just where they operate, things like that. And a lot of the topics we're talking about today, either they don't care about or would take the opposite position. A church that has $265 billion is a good thing. They pursue it. They want to be a part of, an institution that has that much money, regardless of where they fall on it. We also see that kind of with, I shared with Gene, there was a link floating around. It's like a political, like that square political compass of where you fall on the Mormon spectrum. And I took that and I'm like way off the charts on the Orthodox side. And everyone was sharing it. And it occurred to me something that was interesting. People that were near kind of the center, the quote unquote more moderates, they're the ones that are staying in the church, but everyone else on either side is leaving. People on the left and focused on like more mercy, they're leaving. People like myself who are pretty much all Orthodox and, justice, we're out too. And that kind of goes in line with what Megan said in a previous episode, is the church is trying to straddle two sides of basically a growing divide. And it's the outliers that are going to fall off. You want to see that, Jason? Can you pull up the cropped version, Gene, so they can get an idea on Facebook? It's on my phone. Yeah, it's on my phone. I sent it to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would love to and this is something I'm poking at and watching how people respond to this, because I want to get a feel for if there's a correlation with that observation. It seems like people who are pretty passionate about topics on either side of the spectrum are leaving or dissatisfied. And then like what Rob is saying, people who are there either for social reasons or just because whatever, they don't have a reason to leave despite everything that's going on, and so they're staying. Yep. So that, yeah.
Well,
I
so,
just know
thing is, go ahead.
So yeah, that's where I would fall.
Nice.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I have seen people on both sides. I have seen people leaving because they think that the brethren have been led astray, especially with regard to Russell M. Nelson telling everybody to get vaccines and wear a mask. And I've also seen people leaving because of LGBTQ issues and other things that are on the more progressive side. So I've seen it on both sides. I've got friends on both sides. Both are disaffected with the church. Both want to leave the church or have left the church. And it's on two polar opposites of the spectrum.
So I'll just mention at the top of the graph is justice, and at the bottom is mercy, and on the left side is progressive, and on the right side is orthodox. And Diamond Dave is way up into the right corner.
Yep.
He would be one of the Jews that said, "Kill him."
Well, and this is great because I will say this is great because this is in the Ward Radio Discord, so I get to call everyone in Ward Radio woke liberals because they're not anywhere near me, and I'm having so much fun with it. But yeah, it's interesting to see just kind of the spectrums of how people who generally are just there and going for social reasons, family, or even just the personal. Yeah, when I go to church and I pray, I feel something, so I go. I think they're more likely to stay than people on kind of more of the extremes.
Mm-hmm. I just hope they don't all go fundy because, it seems like the ones that feel like the leadership is turning people astray usually go back to the original dogma. And that's why that polygamy video is so disturbing, because it's like, are we really bringing that back? Why are we teaching this to our kids? Like,
well, what
100%.
What are they going to do about all the polygamists in Africa?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, they're going to love it. They're going to love it. They're like, bring it back. Woo-hoo. Because they're culturally acceptable as well.
That's right. That's right. They're going to have to do something about that. And maybe that's why they're doing it.
Tim, that's the elephant in the room. We're not going to talk about it until it's sitting in, the chapel.
Until it's stomping on the coffee table and bouncing up and down.
Amen. Right?
Oh, those are your sister wives? I thought they were your sisters.
I mean, to be fair, with some of your personal stories, and I'm grateful for letting me be here to listen in on a live panel. It sounds like, with what I'm hearing from your stories, the elephant just ran right through the room, destroyed everything, and we're just looking around going, what the hell happened? I think we're at that point.
Pretty much.
Yep.
That too. That too.
I had a vision once when I put my head in a hat, and it was really seeing the demise of the church and the world being a better place. And I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping for that.
Okay. Now,
I did a little bit of research, and I want to share some information about the church's strength, or rather their weakness, which comes to us from census data. And the point I want to make here is that when the church claims that people are flocking in record numbers to the church, or membership growth is up and up, that's like the Chinese government's economic reports. Totally inflated, totally unreliable. So I want to talk about 6 countries. Number 1, Tonga. The church claims 60% of people in Tonga are members of the church. The recent census says 18%. Mexico, over the last 10 years, the church claims that membership is up 17%, and the census says, no, 7%. In Canada, over the last 10 years, the church claims membership is up 7%. The census revealed membership is actually down 19%. Moving along to Australia. Over the last 10 years, Australia's population has gone up 10%. And those who self-identify as Latter-day Saints over that same period is down 6%. I got 2 more. Ireland, the census revealed that there are 72% less Latter-day Saints than what the church claims. And finally, New Zealand, they do a census every 5 years. And New Zealand's population went up 6% during that period. But those identifying as Latter-day Saints went up 0.4%. So this concept of the church rolling forth and filling all the earth they're not even keeping up with the growth rate of the world's populations. And while I have the mic, I want to give another slant on the church. I think the church has been dying from its inception. And what I mean by that is the church, which declared itself as a church full of the gifts of the Spirit, uniting in consecration, or flocking to Missouri in preparation for the second coming, that church died. It's gone. And then the church which reemerged, which is, well, God wants us to practice polygamy, that church is dead. And then the missionary church, which says we are going to go help the Lamanites blossom as a rose, that's dead. That's dead. And they just have to keep dying and being reborn and repackaged into some new iteration.
Wow, that sounds like
Such a great
reincarnation.
Yeah, like
Right?
reincarnation. One thing about the Irish churches, you know how there's Kentucky Fried Chicken and Taco Bell combos? I heard they were going to do ward buildings and pubs as combos.
Now that might work.
Well, I know
like
in like
that
in the UK there have been chapels that have been either bought out by pubs or by mosques because nobody shows up to them anymore.
Wow.
Yep. Third
That-
hour
that-
at the pub. That sounds perfect to me.
That's definitely an interesting
A pint of
slant.
Guinness.
I haven't heard that angle before. I've always kind of wondered because I've heard some kind of like, some just wild people out there who want to see the church destroyed. And I can't help but wonder, assuming that would happen, which I don't believe it will die personally. If anything, I think it's gonna shake to its core base. As faithful members would say, there's going to be the great falling away. The faithful will remain, and the church will go on. I can kind of see that from a more logistical standpoint. But
I'm going to get a hat made. Make the word of wisdom not a commandment again.
yeah. On the
help.
flip side, like the logical conclusion is, if the church is dying, what happens to the good people in the church? What happens to them? Where do they go? What do they do?
You're going to find something else. There's always something else out there. That's the beautiful thing. It's like when you go through a divorce, you're never going to find love again. That's the thing about religion too. You're not going to find a community or a place that likes to worship God. If that's what you're looking for, you're going to find it out there for sure.
Friends of the library.
Hopefully
club.
not one is manipulative.
Go for it.
It's
A library
in
club.
some ways, yes, but in other ways, no. I mean, there will always be core differences in belief, and human beings are just wired differently anyway. Some people are like me, where we thrive in a corporate environment. We thrive in a rigid social structure. And when that's taken away, what happens? Well, I ended up in, drugs and alcohol. I just went off the deep end because there was no structure. So I'm kind of having lived that experience and having been homeless from that, I do kind of have a lot of empathy for good people in the church who feel like they may feel like the church is dying, or they may feel like the church is attacked or whatever, because they may not be able to function without some type of social structure. You know what I mean? What happens to them? What do we do about them?
No, I think,
And that's more of a thought. That's not necessarily a question. It's just a thought.
Well, if it was a question, Diamond Dave, I can answer it. Well, I think I can at least lend some perspective, because me personally, like, I look at my parents, and for my parents, the church is a really positive thing. It provides them with community, it provides them with safety. It's their heritage. It's what they've grown up and spent their entire lives in. I would never, ever want my parents to go through an existential crisis like I did, because I don't think that they would survive it. I really don't think they're equipped to handle that. And so for my parents, the church is a good thing. For them, it's a sense of community. For them, it's all the people that they know and love. For them, it gives them a sense of safety, belonging, meaningfulness. All of the existential fears are addressed in the church for them. So I would not want them to leave. And I think that the church has way too much money for it to ever completely go away. And I think it will always be there. And I was expressing this to Jean the other day. There have been some times when I've released an episode on my channel where I lose followers, I lose subscribers. And I look at it as curating my audience, because there are some people who subscribe to my channel for certain reasons or whatever. And then when they hear something they disagree with, they unsubscribe. And that's fine with me, because it means that I'm curating my audience for the people who want to hear the things that I have to say. And I wonder sometimes if, when the church comes out with, for example, policies against same-sex marriage, policies against trans people, or policies that are non-inclusive to trans people, I wonder if the mainstream church is curating their audience. I wonder if they want to end up with a much smaller group of people who only believe the core things, who only stick to the core things, the dogma of the religion, and to where they're going to continue to perpetuate this myth to the benefit of the people who are in power, to the end of the time that the people are in power who are going to continue to pass it down in power. And we've seen the nepotism in that. We've seen lots of, prophets and apostles prop up their own progeny to be the next people in charge, to be the next leaders and things like that. So I just wonder if the leadership of the church, they're in such an ivory tower anyway. They're so out of touch with the experience of the average Mormon person that I just wonder if, what they're doing is all just to stay in power, to perpetuate their own line of people, to continue to stay in power and to continue to benefit from the systems that they put in place without really regard for any of the larger population at all, knowing that it's going to be a much smaller and smaller population going forward, but not really caring, because it means that they get to stay in power and the people they care about get to stay in power. Just a thought.
Very good point. I think that's a
a
great
good
point,
point.
because that's very corporate mentality. The bottom line is the bottom line. And, a board of directors is going to make sure they get their bonus before they worry about the janitor,
The shareholders,
and his
or
quality
the
of life. Yeah.
Yep.
Anything. So that makes absolute sense. And you're right. They have so much money that they can afford to be out of touch and take that mentality.
Yep.
Because at this point it is $1 billion corporation. I mean, their endowment is bigger than most of the best universities in the country. It's bigger than AT&T. It's bigger than Google. It's bigger than Meta.
Go ahead, say it, Debbie. They have more money than God.
They do.
Yeah, more money than God.
They are the largest single landowner
jelly.
in the United States.
Mhm.
Hey, and I was just thinking about why the boom in temple building is because
Why?
a lot of the church leaders, grew up on Monty Python and the Holy Grail, bring out your dead. It's sort of, they're just playing that. They're trying to remember exactly what that meant in the movie, but they just think it has to do with temple work.
I don't know. I mean, me and Tim were also talking about this with temple building. I mean, every member a missionary, right? Build a temple in every country. I don't know about you. Syria sounds like a terrible place to go right now. Same with like the Donbass region. So it's kind of interesting to see the dynamics of how places are picked and chosen. And me and Tim were kind of speculating on why some really bizarre countries have wards and temples, but others don't. I mean, because what was the country
Haiti?
we said? Well, no, we were talking. There's like a ward. There's a ward in Kazakhstan of all places. I think it's Kazakhstan or it's Kyrgyzstan.
You went
one
to
of
the
two.
church website and we looked at the statistic. Oh, where was that?
I think Gene's pulling it up, but yeah, there's like a ward in Kazakhstan somehow. I don't know how they got there, but they're there now, or Kyrgyzstan. And so, like, some of the countries are like
in Dubai.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
Dubai
the
makes.
Dubai temple.
We're gonna have an argument here because I am not gonna lie. With how beautiful the temples are aesthetically, or at least some of them, I want to see like what the temple's going to look like in Dubai, because they're building that $1 trillion lion city, and Dubai is just the world's excess of wealth. And I think it would be hilarious to see missionaries drive around in gold-plated Lambos. I could totally see that.
Rebecca Biblioteca did an AI version of the Dubai temple. It's absolutely sensational.
I was on that.
Top
Yes.
notch. Yeah.
I saw that, and I was the one in the comments saying I want to see Mormon missionaries and sister missionaries in diamond covered Bugattis and gold plated, Lambos, like go all out.
It was United Arab Emirates, was it not? Yeah, 6 congregations in UAE.
I think that's all like expats or like military personnel or something.
Yeah.
I heard the elders
Definitely.
forum in Dubai, where the temple is, are going to start a group called the Dubai Brothers.
We were looking at Sri Lanka. There's 5 branches. I got it up.
Well, the
Where
one that
was
kills
that?
me is Haiti, because that literally is a third world hell right now that is absolutely dying from the inside out on every level. Like, I'm surprised they haven't stripped the wiring and furniture out of that building, to be honest.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm surprised they got a temple in India with the history behind the Catholic Church and Mother Teresa. I have no idea how that happened.
You know, in India, they have a big gold statue of Joseph Smith in like one of their heritage buildings. It's so creepy. It's wild. I was like,
it's in the Peace Dome. I actually like it. It's the Peace Dome. So the story behind that was there was the guy who owns the Peace Dome, and I forget his name. He came to Utah, learned about, Mormonism, fell in love with it, saw the similarities, went back, and then people in India built that gigantic statue. And there's also statues of other people like Mahatma Gandhi and so it's just yes. Yeah, I wish there was a statue
for you.
I wish.
Yeah, in Kazakhstan.
Bow before me, peasants.
There's 3 branches in Kazakhstan. Now, how they got there, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, like Kazakhstan, and they're not in neighboring countries either. So
service members, like that's the only way. Like American service members going over there and worshiping while they were stationed there, most likely.
I mean, I can kind of see that, but
or
why not
like
the other countries
tourism
around it?
So what would everybody say to Kaiser Soze? We'll say
disenchanted.
I don't enchanted, or are we doing a public service for the church right now?
Why are Exmos so disenchanted? Disenchanted
Well,
with
I guess
what? What's the context?
Yeah, exactly. I guess it depends on what your definition of disenchanted is, and like what specifically is your question? Because if this is a euphemism for you leave the church but you can't leave it alone, I have thoughts. I can answer that question.
I do too, but I'll let Megan go first.
Yeah.
Being somebody who was surrounded by narcissists and abusers for the majority of my life, like for the first 40 years of my life, once I learned to identify abusive and controlling behaviors, I could not unsee it. And I began to see it in the church. And I began to see it from the church leadership, regardless of whether the truth claims are true or not. The men who are leading the church are not good men. They're bullies. They are manipulative and they're controlling.
They're evil and pernicious.
They perpetuate controlling behaviors on their members. Once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. And for me personally, I want other people to be informed about the things that the church has hidden and has obfuscated to keep people in the church. And I realize there's a question to be asked. The important question to be asked is, if the church was not true, would you want to know? Some people will say, no, I don't want to know. If the church is not true, I don't want to know. And it's like I say, with my parents, my grandparents, I want them to stay in the church. I believe it provides something important for them. But for the people who would answer that question, yes, if the church is true, I would want to know. That's the service that I'm providing. That's the information I'm providing. I've done research. I have looked at source documents, not just read random stuff on the internet, but actually looked at source documents from people who were there at the time things were being created. And I've done enough research and reading. I have enough knowledge about narcissistic abuse to know when it's happening. And it's happening right now in the modern day church. So regardless of truth claims, regardless of whether Joseph Smith was a prophet or not, regardless of whether the Book of Mormon was a fraud or whether it was a divinely inspired text, regardless of all those things, the current church is practicing manipulation and control. The current church is practicing coercion against its members. The current church is not allowing its members to have informed consent. And that, to me, is a more egregious sin than anything that has happened in the entire history of the church. What's currently happening in the church is harmful to adults, it's harmful to children. And at the very, very least, if we are not going to protect children, then the church does not need to exist.
Yeah,
I
and like,
agree.
what's
You
the
always
worst
say the
organization?
How do we beat Megan?
What's
Yeah,
the worst
how did we, that
organization,
was
Tim?
like, that was well thought out.
Yeah.
Mine is good. Mine is going to be like, mine is going to be the complete opposite to Kaiser, especially when it comes to the caring woke agendas. I mean, all right, I get the angle, right? So I'm coming from the opposite perspective. I come from the Ward Radio perspective, right? Yeah, some people go off the deep end when they leave. That's not the norm. Most people who leave the church are like most people who are in the church. They live their lives. They just go about their daily business. Like, it is what it is. That's what I do. Okay. Like, it is what it is. But I think, there have been people that have had really messed up stories, right? And I do think that they do have a right to share it. And if you've had messed up things happen to you, or you have seen messed up things, that can, that obviously throws a wrench in the works and makes it difficult to, connect with people of that faith. That alone can separate families. So I think it's a combination of factors. And at the end of the day, I think we all just need to take a step back, and coming from the outsider perspective, having been a convert at the age of 31, I'm 35 now, just kind of look at both sides and be like, all right, this side is experiencing this side is experiencing this, and actually just get to know people as people, regardless of whether or not they are in the church. I mean, I'm not here bashing the church, and there's been a couple points in this live I've even defended the church, or at the very least took an opposite position. Heck, I've gone bowling with my roommates, YSA ward members, and I'm still down to do that. I think there's a lot of focus on what category someone is, from my perspective, because I see a lot of, are you a TBM, a true believing member? Are you a PMO, physically and mentally out? Are you inactive? Are you XMO? I don't even know what to call myself. I'm just me. Okay. That's just how I see it. And that's how I try to treat everyone here. And that's how I see you, Not nearly as eloquent as Megan, but
That's a good point too.
I have pretty hair, so I'll just
You have
brush.
prettier hair than I do.
I don't know about that. I can't even tell.
So, the thing about the Gadianton robbers in the Book of Mormon was that they were a secret society. They kept everything secret. Now, they committed murders, and I'm not accusing the church of committing murders, but on every other
but
level,
they did. But they
But they
did.
did. They have. They
They
do.
did.
there has been that. Okay, I'll give it to you.
And
But,
if we're also equating SEGGS as the sin next to Muck Duck, the church has covered up myriad.
Ooh, she's still on
examples of that.
point. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, please
Muck
continue.
Duck?
I'm sorry, Jean. I'm so sorry. Please continue.
Muck Duck? What are we? Did I miss something
We're
here? Is
avoiding
this
red
another
rum.
Mormon term?
We
Avoiding
Is this
the
can't
right.
say that
We
word,
can't
so we
say
say
these
red
words
rum.
on YouTube.
Well, not in the
Red-
first
red
7
zone.
minutes. After that, it's fair game because that's what advertisers look at. So 7 minutes
That's
and 1
true.
second's on, you're good.
Okay.
That's
Well,
a
in
good
that
lesson to
case, let
learn.
me let loose a string of expletives.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Kidding.
Unalive.
Yeah. Well, and Kaiser, see, here's the thing. I can relate to that, and I think the difference is, and we've all talked about this, is my experience is very different because I'm the only convert here. Everyone else was born in, right? So, like, I understand like the kind of MAGA perspective and the more conservative perspective because I've just come from an outsider perspective. I choose to look at people as people and see where they're coming from and why they believe what they believe. And I mean, you know, it helps me understand people much on a deeper level. That's why, you know, I hang out with, you know, MAGA people, and I've got friends that are quote woke liberals, and I've got, you know, Hindu nationalists on my Facebook. I have all kinds, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, it's not are we disenchanted or why we disenchanted. I think a better question we all should ask is why do we believe now what we do, and why do we choose to live the way now that we do? Because that facilitates conversation, right? As opposed to just being like, oh, you're a TBM, you know, that I don't know, that doesn't. I don't know how I turned into Steven Pinecker. Okay, I'm extremely controversial. I don't know how the hell this happened, but like, you know, I'm friends with Ward Radio because I understand them, and I've chosen, you know, it's choosing to look past not just what they say, but even like the internet personas, right? Some people don't like me because of my, you know, persona on the internet. Fine, whatever. Sure, the same could be said about everybody here. But I mean, at the end of the day, I choose to look past the shock value of Ward Radio and get to know them as people and get to know them and their struggles and their pains. And I want to get to know people who, like, I mean, off the wall people who just hate the church. I want to know why. I want to know them as a person. I want them to feel loved and valued, right? That's just my generic approach.
Well,
That's true
Diamond
because
Dave,
my dad is still true member, and I love my dad. And the thing is, we just we agree not to talk about church. That's where we draw the line. So, you know, it doesn't mean I don't love and respect them. So there you can find love and respect with people who have different opinions, both politically and religiously or sexually. Let's just be honest.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to address Lee's point, what is the evidence? That's a very, I don't know. I think that's kind of a Western kind of approach if you think about it, because in the West, everyone's talking about it is like even Christianity is based on truth claims, and there are apologetics for all denominations of truth claims. But you listen to someone like Colby Reddish. Colby Reddish doesn't have a problem with me for being Hindu because I say it's entirely based on faith. I don't convert anybody. I just live. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of life, right? But when you get in, you know, the Eastern traditions and you get into other cultures and even other interpretations, it's about, does this way of life work? Does it, you know, unify the family? Does it unify the community? So, I mean,
some people it definitely works for them. You're right.
Yeah,
There are people who Mormonism is definitely their cup of tea.
Well, it worked for us for a while.
And I'm not going to tell you not to drink the tea. Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Tim. It worked for us for a while. I mean, look how long some of us were in it.
Yeah. I mean, until it didn't work, it worked.
No. That was literally my case. I couldn't reconcile some core values I had with some theological things that were being taught. And I'm like, all right, there's a lot of internal things. And I'm just like, you know what? Done. Because if it no longer worked. So now, if it works for someone else, more power to you. I hope you enjoy the funeral potatoes. I hope you enjoy the YSA awards and the awkward dances, like, you know, all of it. I sincerely hope you enjoy all the things the LDS Church has to offer if it's working for you.
And realistically, now that they're going to a church in the home thing, how many families are really going to do that? You know, I mean,
does Dave know the answer?
I
How
can.
many
I
I
didn't
can.
even hear the question. So
How many? Okay, you're supposed to have family home evening every Monday night, right?
mhm.
Actually, they took it out.
Really?
Did they?
Yeah.
Really?
Wait,
It's
what?
just to do whenever you want now.
Oh, so
Really?
it doesn't
Because
have to be every Monday now.
there's FHE things here
I think because of
every
habit.
Monday.
I think it's because of habit that
That's because
Monday
you're in
night.
Provo. They still do it old school. They're
Okay,
like 20
but-
years behind, even
Yeah,
if
and
the
they do
church has
polygamy
changed.
too in Provo, so whatever.
They absolutely do.
But
Ever
I
like,
been to Rocky
wish.
Ridge?
like using family home evening as an example. Okay, when I had kids,
Okay.
we maybe did it once a month if we were lucky, you know. And so they're going to do church at home. I mean, you're in your
Well,
at home. You're in your environment. You're going to do what you're going to want to do. I mean, I
I
hear
can
about
only
these.
speak
Right.
for myself, but for myself, having my 6 kiddos at home, being married to somebody who is not active, I wanted to Mormon harder than anybody else could Mormon. I wanted to make sure that my kids had that foundation because I believed the promises of the leadership of the church. I believed that if I Mormoned harder than anybody else Mormoned, that my kids would be safe. And that's what I wanted more than anything else. And so I, regardless of what my spouse was doing, and sometimes I had 7 children instead of 6 because, you know, we would gather together and he would instigate fights and all of that stuff. But I religiously made sure, and there's no pun intended there, or maybe it is pun intended. I made sure that we read scriptures every morning. I made sure that we did family home evening every Monday night. I made sure that my kids got to church every single Sunday. Even if I was sick or if I was traveling, I would arrange for rides for my children to get to church because I was that committed to making sure that my kids had every opportunity to feel the Spirit, to learn the lessons, to do all the things. I was relentless in teaching my kids the gospel of Jesus Christ as I understood it. And to answer your questions, Lee, here, my kids safe from the kind of abuse that I suffered as a child. I wanted to make sure that my children had spiritual protection. I wanted to make sure that they had the gift of the Holy Ghost that would prompt them away from people and situations that were harmful to them. So I Mormoned as hard as I could possibly Mormon. And you know what happened? At the age of 12, my oldest son came to me and he said, "Mom, I just don't think I believe this anymore." And I said, "Well, what do
Wow.
you believe?" And he said, "Well, I believe in God." And I said, "Okay, well, let's start there. You don't have to believe everything. Let's just start with that belief in God." And what happened is he got further and further and further and further and further away from the things that I thought were the truth. And that created a huge division between us because I believed that he was falling away and I had grief over that. I had shame over it. But I also understood because as a kid who was in a part member family, he got bullied in the church because his parents were not married in the temple. He got bullied because he was not born in the covenant. He got bullied because he wasn't the same as all of the other kids whose parents were in the church leadership. So I completely did not fault him at all for not wanting to be a part of the church. And this is where the problem arises, is that even when we as parents try our absolute best, try our absolute hardest to give our kids a spiritual foundation that we were taught was going to save them from the evils of the world, what we were taught is that if we teach our kids the truth, they will never stray from it. And we were also taught that they would be protected from the evils and the sorrows of the world. And guess what? That didn't freaking happen. My kids weren't protected from any of that stuff. And neither was I, for that matter. I lived the church teachings religiously. I was a card-carrying member. I went to the temple as often as I possibly could. And guess what? I was still really freaking sad most of the time. I had severe depression. I had PTSD. And nothing that the church could offer me could help me or could save me from any of that. It was not until I took my own destiny into my own hands and went out and sought my own help outside of the church that I was finally able to heal. So what the church promised me was that if I was faithful and that if I followed everything that they told me to do, that I would be happy, that I would be successful, that my life would be wonderful. And even when I had suffering, that my suffering would be swallowed up in the joy of Christ. Literally, that's what I was taught. And that did not happen.
That's right. So everybody, go to Megan's
Yep.
channel if you're on my channel.
Absolutely.
Listen
Megan,
to
go ahead
Megan.
and say again how to find you, because I have about 30 people on my side, and you have about 50 people on your side, and so we're at our record numbers right now.
That's
All
pretty
of
cool.
Megan mostly, and Diamond Dave combing his hair, of course. That's why I was going to include that.
Is that really why? Like,
Yes, people
have your
want
numbers
to see your fabulous
numbers
hair.
increased because I'm just here brushing my hair?
Yes, people love your fabulous
Could be.
hair.
It's
That's what's
mesmerizing.
happening.
Maybe I
Yeah.
should hit up.
Fabio.
You should be at General Conference, and you know how they do the American Sign Language.
The sign
You
language?
could do the American
The hairbrush.
language, and just
I was
soothe,
gonna say because
like AMSR. Or
I was gonna
ASMR,
say
whatever.
because Debbie brought up. I think it was Debbie, but somebody brought up the like watching some of like the church articles and stuff like that earlier. I don't know. Maybe I should go on like Scripture Central and make it watchable. Maybe. I mean,
I don't know if that's possible.
I love those people to death, and I really I follow their page to show support because I'm a content creator. I like to support other content creators regardless, but I just stare at it. It's like, okay, I'm bored now, and then I wander off to something more exciting.
So were you able to give your pitch, Megan? I don't remember.
Oh, my channel is at @3rd_verse on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. The end.
That's right. And Megan does other personal services. She will go to your house and clean it for you. No. She will go to your house and tell you how to clean your house.
I don't do as much in-person decluttering these days, but I do one-on-one live coaching, and I do have an e-course coming out on
That's
January
right.
7th.
The
Of how
e-course is coming
to-
out January 7th.
Yeah.
So-
On how to recognize manipulative and controlling behaviors and how to defend against them so that you don't get manipulated and controlled.
So Megan and I are maybe going to do a few days before that an advertisement show for it. Anybody wants to hop in on that, let us know.
Mhm.
And so,
Megan does wholesome entertainment. I, on the other hand, will gladly publicly judge your in-laws for $20.
there you go. That'd be a good one.
Oh
That's a good
man,
one.
that's
That might be
great.
$1 million
gosh.
idea. So
I
one
would
other
pay way
thing-
more than Diamond Dave. I don't have in-laws anymore,
Yeah,
but my
exactly.
ex-in-laws, I would love that.
Sure.
One other thing happened in my life just this last week. We got invited to come to church to the ward Christmas event, which happened to be a brunch, right? And my wife's mother just lives 3 blocks away. We're in the same ward. We've been in the same ward together for the last pretty close to 35 years. And so her mom still goes to church, and she invited us kindly to come, to this event, right? I immediately said yes, because whenever there's food, I feel the spirit, right? My wife was hesitant because she wasn't really willing to take advantage of stuff, so she tries to bring that, to make me feel bad that I'm just going after the food. No, I'm just kidding. But she wasn't sure if she can go, and I said, we should go, right? So we go, and they do a little program, and by little, it's almost our ward. And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but we went from 6 wards in our stake, and we're down to 2 out of the 6 from when I was a kid. I'm still living in the same ward that I was 1 year old in. But and we recently merged, right? So I'm trying to say that it's all they could do to get as many people together. So basically, 4 wards are now in one building from when I was a kid right now. And there was the cultural hall was only filled 2/3 of the way. 25 years ago, when we had a ward event, the whole tables it was hard to get around, right? And then when they did the program, they tried their best. But it was basically the shepherds just had like a sheet around them, they had something out of, construction paper that was some sort of decoration. They tried to have a stick for a staff or something. And there was only like barely enough people to just do the nativity scene and to read a couple scriptures. And afterward, my wife said, that is so sad, right? It was such a sad little thing, right?
Christmas party.
And it's like, they did their best, and we can't blame the people that did it. But something that will go along with Mormonism dying is there are fewer youth to pass a sacrament, to do stage things, right? To do these little programs. And, and they're struggling. And there's news a couple of weeks ago that 5 stakes became 2 in right in the heart of the Utah, the Salt Lake Valley.
Yep. Taylorsville.
Taylorsville. And so on one hand, I was sad that the people didn't get the very good experience. We used to have kids, line up for Santa, all down around the side of the cultural hall. And there was just, enough to make a line almost, and, but Santa was decked out pretty well. I was convinced.
Oh, that's good. I mean, personally, I think Christmas is nothing more than a CIA operation to get us to buy trees. That's right. That's really
it's all a commercial thing. Yeah. And so
got to save the planet, but we won't do it on our own. So we got to make holidays so people will buy plants to repair the ozone.
Well, I got a fake tree, so screw you, CIA.
There you go.
Someone's on a watch list now.
Let's be honest, Dave, I was on a watch list long before that.
Same.
We all were.
Yeah. And so when I titled this, why is Mormonism dying? It's because of the money. It's never going to be dead, right? But it's going to be on life support. It's going to be, diagnosed with stage 4 cancer for a little while, maybe or whatever. But
unless they had some major controversy like the Catholics, which they're kind of almost with the sexual SA cover-ups, that could definitely bite them.
Right.
I'm waiting for Whoopi Goldberg. So many controversies, though. That's the thing that blows my mind is that it's not just the SA scandals, not just the Boy Scouts, it's not just the cover-ups, it's not just the SEC. Like, there are so many scandals. That's what drives me wild, is that there are already enough scandals, and yet it's
not just Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
We might have an argument over this question because I just legitimately don't know. But when it comes, because like just Christianity and religion in general is just declining in the West anyway.
Yeah.
So my
world.
question is, where like. Are there any stats somewhere that shows where the LDS Church is in relation to like the Catholic Church and other Christian denominations? And because I think that may be worth looking into. Like I have no doubt what you guys are talking about. People left because of the SA scandals and the SEC stuff and things like that. Yeah. But I'm also wondering, because people are just leaving in general, not just for those reasons, but they're leaving in general, how much of that is just religion declining, or if there's like more leaving because of the scandals or less?
At our meeting Friday night, these people left because of the example of their parents, that they were hypocritical.
Interesting. Okay.
That paper that Robert shared with the data, as far as countries reporting, because that's something that every country does as far as they put a pulse on their people. And it doesn't just have Mormonism on that report. It has Catholics, Jews, Muslims, Protestants.
I thought that was just for the U.S.
It does do a breakdown.
No, it was
No.
worldwide.
Yep. It
Oh, that was
was
worldwide. Okay,
worldwide. So there was like New
I'm gonna have to look
Zealand,
at that.
Australia. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Nemo might have done a breakdown on that statistic chart as well, but don't quote
No.
me. But I've seen that research shared on other channels.
Yeah, and
But
that
it
makes
is available.
sense.
If not, just reach out to Robert.
For sure, because I want to see also like the country by country stats, because I know like in the US there's like 30, me and Tim were talking about this, it's like 28 to 30% of Americans are no religion at all, right? They're
Yeah,
just nones.
none.
On the flip side, religion is never leaving the Middle East. So, it's, or even like Africa. So it'd be interesting to see like the different dynamics, and I don't know, I'm kind of a nerd like that. And I like to know the why. So not just the LDS Church, but religion in the West, and why is it happening in the West? But is it cultural? Is it scientific? Is it scandals? Is it, Was I ever Mormon? Yes. You missed the part where they showed my where I fall on the quote unquote Mormon spectrum.
Yeah.
He's off the charts, guys. He's off the charts. He's on the spectrum of off the spectrum.
On the spectrum, but off the charts.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's what all my exes have said. So,
And so if the church is doing surveys, and if they ever decide to survey the people that aren't going and ask them why they're not going, there is a chance they have a revelation that they should bring back, ward bazaars.
They already know.
Road
They already
shows.
did that study in 2013 where it showed why people leave and what would bring them back.
John
They know.
DeLin's.
Yeah, the one that they did for Uchtdorf. They know what the problems are.
Yeah.
People leave not for the reasons that they say. None of those reasons are valid. Well, for a tiny percentage, but most people leave for other reasons. And
So I've done some research on this myself recently, and I can just share a sort of like brief synopsis of the things that I've researched and the data that I've looked at. So in Utah now, only 42% of adults now self-identify as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
really?
Broadly, the United States has seen a decline in church membership overall across all denominations. From the period from 1998 to 2018, overall church membership fell from 70% to 50%. Significant drops are noted among Catholics, where 13% of people have left the Catholic religion nationwide in the US. In other countries, it's a little more ambiguous. It's a little difficult to gather data, on how many people are leaving and what the actual statistics are there. But the general trends seem to suggest that the reasons that people are leaving is that the rise of scientific explanation over religious just leads to secularization. There are changes in social values, societal values, less emphasis on religious structures. There's an institutional distrust of religion, obviously, across all nations. The access to the internet and information obviously has led to decline in Mormonism, certainly, but in also other religions. And then the other thing is like disagreement with religious stances on societal issues like same-sex marriage and women's roles, family and demographic changes. Like all of these things lead to people leaving religion. But the problem is that even when people leave religion, they build up some other thing in its place. And what we're seeing is political ideologies taking the place of religion. So the issue is that all of the questions that religion answers for us, when people leave religion, they replace it with something else, usually, because most people don't truly confront the existential fears that come up when religion leaves. And so they, generally speaking, people tend to leave religion but replace it with something else.
I want to disagree with Kaiser as like part of an organized religion. I want to disagree with that. I think because true spirituality and inner peace, those are the key words, and those are very, very unique to the individual. And there's different definitions of spirituality. The one I like to, lean towards is one's personal, experience and acceptance of oneself in the journey of life in the state of our three-dimensional reality, right? So what that basically means is that coming to peace with yourself and to really know yourself and to be able to pause and reflect. You do not I'm going to get heat from Ward Radio on this. I'm going to say this right now. But in my opinion, you do not need religion to have that capacity. Meditation,
I agree.
meditation historically comes from Hinduism, Buddhism, and other Eastern religions. However, you don't need to be of those religions to gain the benefits from it.
True.
Same thing with yoga. Right. I mean, there's stupid amounts here in the Provo area of like yoga classes. I've no other Hindus here, but everybody does yoga, right? There are still benefits you can gain from it, even though you may not be of that faith. So I will definitely push back on that, because I think to say that secular humanists or atheists can't have, inner peace or spiritual experiences, that flies in the face of many atheists that I have met. And I like to call them seculars because there are like, a whole 5 atheists on the internet who want to smash all religion and hate everyone who's religious. I'm not talking about them. Just like your average person who doesn't have a religion, right? Like that flies in the face of every, like, thousands of them I've met,
Right. A mindful walk
That's
in
a
the
great
park
point.
can be a good meditation session.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Right?
different forms.
Sometimes you can find more peace in the mountains than you can find in a church, or in those moments of solitude than you can find in a congregation. Religion doesn't hold the keys to all of those feelings, because if you want to say religion is true, then that means you have to interact with religion to access those tools or that peace. And who's to say you can't do it like on a hike or in meditation or just looking at a beautiful sunset? There is beauty in a lot of things, and religion doesn't hold
Mm-hmm.
the market in that. And I think that's what people are finding, is that they're finding places to have more of those kind of moments, because I don't think church can really provide it. It's like saying, is McDonald's a great meal that you would want to eat every day? Yeah, you eat it once in a while, but it's not satisfying. I feel like that's how the church became. It wasn't satisfying anymore. I wanted more for myself. I wanted more for like my own inner peace and ability to think outside of the box. And I feel like I became a nicer person once I left the church. I was less judgmental. I wasn't as uppity. I didn't think I had all the answers and go look at someone and say, oh, that poor soul, if they could only be like me. Which unfortunately, when you think that you're superior, you do get a little bit of a stick up your ass. And I'm so glad that I pulled it out, because I do have more compassion. I have more diversity in my life, and I have more experiences that really are enriching. And that's a beautiful thing. So if you can find that in a church, great. But no one can say you can't find that outside of a church.
And also, I will say, because there is a flip side of this coin, might start an argument, but that's why I've never, just with my lens and my experience, I've never saw the church, like the temple ceremonies, because that's all on the internet. I never saw them as like culty. And the reason is because if you take what I just said and flip it for religious adherence, those are individuals coming together in a shared communal experience, seeking individual spirituality in the company of others. And I do also think there is a place for religion as well. And that's why I generally don't get along with people who specifically, and there's like 5 of them I've seen on the internet in the year. There's not many, but there is a place for religion as well, because we do. No man is an island. We bond over similar experiences, and religious rituals and artistic symbolism is one of them, right? And that's not
It
just
reminds
with
me of
the Mormon Church.
Mormonish, the naked fun run. That's what's flashing through my mind. Listen,
Yeah.
you can find Jesus anywhere.
I mean, you can find peace there. You might also find a couple child
Things
support
used to be
cases
different.
from pregnancy, but it's fine. But yeah, so I do want to kind of address
Sorry.
both sides of the coin, because Kaiser did bring up a point that I did kind of see, and that Megan touched on from a different angle, is whenever you have a habit in life, in my case, not good habits, you have to replace it with something, otherwise you will collapse. So I do think that, there is a place for religion. Religion has brought us literature and architecture. It has brought us art.
Music.
And music, exactly. It has brought us song, and it has brought us the ability to tell tales of myth and legend. Some of the most beautiful stories you will ever read come from, 4,000-year-old religious writings. It's beautiful. It's wonderful, of different religions. You should go check it out. Right. So that's why, personally, when I left, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just because this one specific thing called Mormonism didn't work, that doesn't mean that no religion has any value to anyone under any circumstances. I want to hold space for both.
Well, and to Megan's point about her parents, like, to
Mm-hmm.
have someone go through an existential crisis, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. It's the hardest thing you'll ever go through. And it is very challenging to do all those things, replace those people and those habits with something that gives you joy. And that is super hard to do. It is not easy. And I literally don't wish the faith crisis on anyone unless they are willing to jump in the pool.
Yeah.
It's not.
No.
And to your earlier point, Diamond Dave, I really appreciate about you that you surround yourself with the opinions of different people. I admire that about you, because I think there are not enough people who are willing to listen to people who disagree with them and to accept, other opinions. I think it's such an important skill to have. We have lost the ability and the skill in this nation, I think, and maybe in the world, for civil discourse, where we can disagree with each other respectfully, where we can see each other's point of view and see the value in someone else's argument, see the value in someone else's lifestyle. And I think it's what, one of the things that, like Tim and Jean were saying earlier in our chat, our private chat before the episode, we all want the same things. And this is one of the things I say on my channel all the time. We human beings all want the same things. We all want love and belonging. We all want meaning in our lives. And we all want to find acceptance among our fellow human beings. And when we realize that, we can come to a common ground and a common understanding of each other. And we can be willing to accept each other's point of views and see that there's value in the lives and the traditions of other people that are different from our own.
Well, and I've said it before, and I say it again, because I left the church. Did I freeze?
You're good.
No.
We can hear you.
Well, you froze now.
Well, now you're frozen.
Oh wow. You can still talk though. Let me.
Did I freeze? Am I back?
No,
Am I
you're
back?
back.
Okay.
You're back.
Am I
You're
good?
back.
Okay.
You're goated.
Well, so thank you. So yeah, my internet's being weird. So I've said it before and I say it again. I left the church, but I can't leave it alone, because there are people like in the podcasting scene on both sides that take pot shots at each other. The drama is hilarious. You know what I mean? And so it's like I see a bunch of people going back and forth. Very few are sitting down and talking with each other. I'll sit down with anybody because I am secure in my faith. I can hear other perspectives, and I know my life experience. So my life experience and my way of life may be different, but somebody else is pretty much everyone here is fundamentally different than mine from what I'm seeing. But that's fine because, I mean, it is what it is. So
That's right. I forgot to have my shirt on. Show everybody my shirt. Got this from Sunstone. Can you read that?
More than one way to Mormon.
So yeah,
that's like
my way to Mormon is to
style.
ex-Mormon all day long, every day.
that's right. There
Right.
should be. Somebody said, a cult is a place that doesn't let you leave with dignity, right?
Mhm.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
so if there was just a way of like, hey, we want you here, and if we're not doing stuff right and you want to leave, go ahead. But hey, exit interview, right? If you're going to leave, tell us what would have kept you, right? So that we can do
Right.
better for the people that are staying, right?
Yeah.
So all those things, and I think that's what a lot of this whole spectrum of things are. Everybody's trying to. It's sort of a democratization, right, of Mormonism by being able to have everybody have their voices.
Well, Mormonism is a totalitarian based religion, so I don't know if they're ever going to be able to find that common ground as far as from the leadership,
So there,
to be honest.
John DeLynn could probably do a show where activism has led to positive change in the church, right?
That's true.
Youth
Mhm.
can have their parents come into, interviews now, right? Because of Sam Young, he had to get excommunicated before the church would change their policy. There was a bishop in, I think, Washington State who baptized and set apart to the Melchizedek priesthood a black man.
Yeah.
And that bishop got excommunicated. That happened in the 70s. And within a year,
Couple of
all of
years.
a sudden there was a
3 or 4
revelation
years.
that allowed blacks to receive the priesthood. So activism does change things, right? The temple ceremonies have gotten far less culty, we'll just say, and you can track the changes. There's places you can track the changes. And so anyhow, people should be free. There should be Mormonism that's a big tent. I would probably go more if there was, individual wards sometimes here and there are more welcoming, but the rainbow also is a thing. Diamond Dave, are you okay with LGBTQ community?
Oh, of course.
You don't have anything against them?
Technically, I fall into that category anyway.
There you go.
So,
and it's not just the long hair.
Yeah. Oh, well, and I mean, too, it's like, I don't know, my lens on such things has always been fundamentally different. Because where Mormonism teaches that the body's a temple and things like that, I'm of the belief that the body is just a shell and nothing more. It's a shell for the soul. It has no value. So, I mean, what people do, in the comforts of their own home and it with, whoever that they love, that's, why would I care? That doesn't affect me. Like,
I don't think it's anybody's business what a consenting adult does in their bedroom. I think that's really weird. If anyone outside of a religion started asking me my flavor and they were a stranger to me, I would be kind of like, why do you want to know that? It's a little off-putting way to start a conversation. Hey, do you masturbate? What? Why do I have to tell you that? I mean, it's just the weirdest thing in the world to have an adult ask you about your
kink
or whatever it is.
I just
I
say
just
that
don't get
first
it.
when I meet somebody. I masturbate. How you doing? My name is Gene.
It's his whole identity.
To have somebody ask that
Make
question.
masturbation great again, Gene.
That's right. That's right.
Let me shake your hand.
Mama. Masturbation.
I don't. I mean, I'm also going to get flack for saying this from some members, but isn't that what America is? Land of the free and home of Baywatch. What did we all do when we watched Baywatch,
Right?
gentlemen? What did we all do?
I never watched
And ladies.
I never watched
okay, there you go.
Dave.
What?
I read my scriptures while I was
Women
sorry,
read
what?
No.
Women read. 50 Shades of Grey was extremely popular for a reason. Let's just be frank, okay?
True.
So
Right.
And it came to pass that the women were clothed scantily.
There you go.
You know, I will
actually
say
had to
this.
stop reading the Bible sometimes because
I will
would,
say this because I've made this joke with missionaries before, but I've seen some memes going around about Mormonism as like the Rocky Mountain horror sex cult or something like that. You know, it's like a sex
I've
cult.
seen that one.
So here's the problem I have with it. The women wear clothes. There's no drugs. This is the worst cult I've ever been a part of. Like,
Right?
like
Come
I
on.
if it I
Can't
don't
even sex
I
cult, right?
personally yeah I was gonna say I don't personally think it's a cult, but if it is, worst cult ever. Just
That's right.
just saying. You want to get people back. You
Kool-Aid
want to
is
get
even watered down.
you want to get me back in the church. Have two beautiful women come to the door in bikinis. I will sign whatever they have. I do not care. Like
Diamond Dave's Baywatch Mormonism coming soon to a ward near you.
yeah, I'm gonna compete
Make
with
sex
Steve.
cult fun again.
So
Yeah, I
we
mean,
try to keep the shows to around 2 hours. Does anybody have any last words that they want to say? Any last prophecies or predictions or things they want to do? before
I
we
like Tim's
go?
cat. Look at that cat.
There you go.
That's
This,
a
this is
magnificent cat.
Monkey.
Aw.
This is one of many.
Well, I will just say, since the topic of the episode is why is Mormonism dying, and this is something that I've said before, and I'll continue to say it again. You know, the church leaders have asked us to stay in the boat. You know, don't get out of the boat. Just stay in the boat. Just stay in here with all the rest of us, and you'll be fine. And we'll just all sail to the promised land together. And the problem is that the boat has been stranded on a rock since 1830, and it hasn't moved since then. And they want you to believe that what's out there is a deep and endless ocean full of monsters, and what it actually is dry land. And when you climb out of the boat and you get on dry land, you find out that there is a wonderful and beautiful world out there. And I think that's why Mormonism is dying, is because we were convinced to believe that Mormonism was the only way for us to be happy. And when we weren't happy in Mormonism and we left, we found out that there was happiness outside of the church. We found that there was love and acceptance and belonging and all the things we wanted Mormonism to be, we found outside of the church. And then we continue to talk about it because we knew that when we were in the church, we weren't told the truth. And we were sad that we were lied to and deceived. And we wanted other people to not be deceived too. So we continue to talk about it so that other people will know that there is another way. There is a place to go. When, was it Jeffrey R. Holland that gave the talk about where will you go?
Yeah.
Where will we go? Wherever the hell I want to. Because
Right.
all of the places that I've gone since I've been outside of Mormonism have been the places where I've found the most happiness, the most joy, the most love, the most center, the places where I've been accepted more than anywhere else, and the places where I've found who I truly am as a human being. And so why is Mormonism dying? It's because it doesn't give us any of the things that it promised to give us. It never was any of the things that it said it was going to be. And those of us who have left, for the most part, have found more love and peace and acceptance outside of the church than we ever did inside. That's why.
Definitely. Definitely.
Amen. Amen.
Wanted to say one more thing for me. So Brad says there's 19 new converts in my ward in Ohio this year. We're growing. Congratulations. Now, one thing that also harms the church was a long-standing policy that I recall being told it was milk before the meat.
Yep.
And so imagine you're going to buy a car from a car dealer and you say, how many miles are on the engine? And they say, well, the milk before the meat. Look, it has 4 tires. It's got a quarter tank of gas. Just buy it. It'll be okay. And then you buy it and later on you find out it has 180,000 miles on it. And that's called non-consent. So milk before the meat is a perfect example of non-consensual interactions.
My
So
question
19
for
new
Brad.
converts in the ward were taught about Joseph Smith's polygamy. Megan, you want to pitch in with some things that you can list that maybe Dave,
I want to jump in and give a quick
Adam
shout out to
Dodd.
Kyle, because Kyle's over here from Ward Radio. And hey, I will say this, Kyle, I've defended Carded on Radio Free Mormon. I will defend these people, so play nice in the chat, okay? I'm the new Stephen Pinecker, apparently. I don't know how the hell this happened. Welcome to the party. Be nice in the chat.
Wait, what
thanks,
was Tim
Nancy
going
Lowe,
to
for
say?
watching. And so,
Tim, what were you going to say?
I got distracted.
were you going to say a
Oh.
list of things that aren't taught in the discussions that people
Adam
have to find out
God.
later?
Adam God,
Blood atonement,
polygamy, blood atonement.
death oaths.
Joseph Smith, Nauvoo polygamy.
Yeah. My question for him is, how many did those 19 replace who are no longer going? How many have you
Oh,
lost?
That'd be
Yeah.
good too. But we
See.
hope that they're there. Hi, Kyle. My brother's name is Kyle, but with a K. So I don't know if
Which chat is Kyle in?
Oh, he left already. We're too boring for him.
Oh well.
Well, he did say he was just here
pop
for me,
in.
and then he bounced. So I don't know. He's in the Word Radio Discord. We go back and forth. We have a fun time. So
and so anyway.
he's cool.
Oh,
He's cool.
building up Zion, and leave your.
Oh, all the
country.
temples. There's supposed to be 100 temples in Missouri by now.
Oh,
Yeah.
and wasn't it also that if Joseph Smith lived to be, what was it,
84 or
60,
whatever it was.
80, 84 years old, that Jesus would come in his lifetime? Well, he
and-
didn't
Oh, yeah.
live
The
to
second
be
coming
that
is
long.
coming.
So
It's coming.
And that was
The
1890.
second coming
So
is coming.
yeah,
Yeah.
we've been the
And-
Latter-day Saints for 200 years.
And the
Isn't that
only
wild?
reason why that scripture was given is, it's my understanding, that when they installed Latter-day Saints as part of the name of the church in the mid 1830s, it's because it and lots of other churches like the Campbellites were expecting Jesus at any moment.
Any
Yeah.
minute.
They were
Right.
preparing the world right then and there.
The rapture.
Jesus
like
was
they're
coming.
now, they're doing
We got
the
to
same thing
do all
right
we
now.
can,
Mhm.
and we have to do it. And so those are some of the things that were meat, and also like the temple ceremony. You go to the temple, and the first thing in the temple was, if anybody doesn't want to do all the things in the temple, you can leave right now. You're free
Leave
to
now.
leave, but we're not
No,
going
no,
to tell you
no,
what they are.
But before that, though, you have to get touched under a poncho.
In a
You
By
have
ritual
to do
some
bath.
other
old
non-consensual things that you weren't expecting.
Yeah.
But because your
secret
family
room.
and friends are there,
The
and
spa
you're
treatment,
joining the
that's what I
club,
call it.
you're going to get some meat now. You finally are able to be join the inner circle by going to the temple.
Phrasing, Gene. Phrasing.
What do you want? What
How
rephrase
about
it?
the-
Dave?
You said something about like being in the parlor and now you're getting some meat. Like you're like that's phrasing,
You were in
buddy.
the private room and
You
then
do
you
get-
get to meet.
It's not a copyright strike, though, is it?
No,
This is
it's
bad
just
luck.
it's you.
This is
It's
bad
you
luck.
saying that. I never thought I'd hear those
Dave,
words
your
come out
mind
of
is
your
still
mouth.
on Baywatch. So
Yep, it is. We're not
Um,
talking
Because
about
America's
that.
a great country. America's a
There's
great
the virgin
country.
doctrine.
This is a rabbit hole for another
Everyone
time.
when you die.
Okay.
Sorry, Eleanor
DNC
Nelson.
132 is a hot mess of bad ideas. When you have that
Megan,
many words saying virgins in heaven, you start to sound a little fundy.
yeah. So Megan, do you have an episode where you talk about the temple
I have not yet
experiences?
Oh.
received it. I desire to receive it. I have not. I just can't. I haven't done it
Hey,
yet.
that
I
was-
can't.
You've been slowly planning it, we'll say. And
I've been thinking about it for a really long time, but every time I think about it, it's so much to cover that I don't know. It's going to be a lot. It's just going to
Well,
be a lot. And
we need to-
I've already had a lot, and I've already done a lot. I've already been through a lot. I've already put out a lot of
Right.
episodes, and all in good time. It
That's
will
right.
happen.
It'll come someday.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dave, I
just-
used the
I
word
do
come.
desire all to receive it.
All
I'm calling your bishop.
all arrive.
I don't have
Okay.
a bishop anymore. I
No,
resigned.
I'm calling Gene's bishop. I'm calling Gene's bishop.
Yeah. So
Hey,
thanks
Gene,
everybody
we
for
do
watching.
hard things around
Okay, wait,
here.
wait, wait,
We
wait,
do
wait.
hard things.
Okay, wait before the thanks.
before we go, I would like everybody to go and watch the first segment of 60 Minutes that was on Sunday about Syria and see the ruins and see that family.
They're all humans, right?
Yeah, the walls are blowing out of their apartment and they're growing potatoes between bricks so they can live. I mean, it really got to me. That whole segment just really got me. Everybody go watch it and see the humanity. We're all the same. We all want the same stuff.
That's right. That is. We are all beautiful humans, as Megan likes to say to start her shows. And so, even the ones that are bad sometimes do some good things, we'll say.
If we can see the humanity in everyone, then we will be better humans ourselves.
Yeah. And so, but it doesn't mean we don't want to protect each other and be watchful, right? But
right.
But anyhow, so everyone, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.
Thank you for
Come back again for Tuesdays with Tim. We're thinking that we might record something this Sunday and we'll play it on Tuesday, which happens to be Christmas Eve, some little holiday that some radicals invented in, I'm going to say, the Hellenistic areas of the
Saturnalia.
Or it could have just been Coca-Cola invented it in 1934. I saw a professor say that to sell more Coke. But anyhow,
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Go to bed.
Get ready for everything that's coming up. Buy your presents.
Do your chores and go to bed.
We don't want anybody to get
Simon,
cold.
Dave,
for
thank
Christmas.
you for that.
Yell at your neighbors.
Thanks a lot. We will see you next time. Peace, love.
Good night, everyone.